In this video we're using Substance 3D Designer to create a rock cliff. Let's go over the keynodes and parameters we'll use first. The multi-directional warp node is a great node to warp shapes in an interesting way. It distorts your shape in a few set directions based on an intensity input. Warp angle is used to adjust the warp directions. With mode, I have control over the blending behavior. Average is more of a soft distortion. Max extends, min eats away, and chain easily gives you a really intense distortion. The directions parameter lets you choose how many directions to warp. The histogram select node is great to set the grayscale value middle point position and select the range around it. Position sets the middle position where the range selection happens. Range is the width of the selection range. Edge Detect node detects high contrast areas in a black and white image and creates edges around these. Edge width is the thickness of the edge. Edge roundness rounds sharp corners. The non-uniform directional warp node is an advanced directional warp node that allows control over the angle through a custom map input, whereas multi-directional warp only uses parameters for it. This means that you can create advanced curving and trailing effects. The warp angle input multiplier sets the effect strength of the warp angle input map. Trail length defines the length of the warp trails. Let's build this basic rock cliff setup together. You can then use it as a base for different rock and cliff materials. For this Quicktip example, we start with the tile generator node. We switch the pattern to pyramid. Then we first change the blending mode to max to get the shapes to combine like a real height map. To tweak the size, we switch the size mode to normal size. Now we adjust the size X to 0.5 and increase the scale to 7. For more randomness, we increase the scale random to 0.35 and the position random X and Y to 1. Further, we tweak the luminance random value to 0.6 for height variation. We add a fractal sum base node to get the nice noise variation. For a smoother result, let's lower the roughness to 0.55. To get smaller details, we tweak the min and max level to 5 and 12. Now we connect the tile generator node to a multi-directional warp and use the fractal sum base as intensity input to get some more details. Let's increase the intensity to 30 for a stronger effect. We further change the warp angle for a different direction. Use chain as mode for a stronger effect and lower the directions to 2. This helps to warp in fewer axes. We continue with a histogram select node to select the inner areas. Let's further lowering the position to 0.4 and reducing the range to 0.2 for a smaller area. For a stronger contrast, we increase the contrast value to 0.8. We use an edge detect node with an edge width of 1.8 to get edges around those areas. Let's reduce edge roundness to 0. To get more details, we use a slope blur node. As slope input, we take the fractal sum base, increase the samples to 32 for a smoother effect, and lower the intensity to 0.9. We connect the multi-directional warp node with a blend node, change the mode to multiply, and reduce the opacity to 0.05 for a saddle damage crack details effect. Finally, we use an auto levels node to get the full 0 to 1 range. Here's our final base result of the setup we did before. You can use this as base rock and cliffs, save this setup and use it in another project, or make a custom node out of it. Let's dive into a more advanced version of this tip. For more control over the base shapes, I use a Cube 3D or also a shape node with pyramid or other patterns. Then I use a sculpting method with gradients and the min darken blending mode to sculpt the way areas of the shapes. Repeat this step to get the exact shapes you want. Blurring the shapes helps me to get less sharp and more round looking structure. Make it tile patch is great to get the variation for further deformation afterwards. I have control over the amount of details and also the option to bring in rotation if I want. I use a blur afterwards if I want to make the results less sharp. For the rough first deformation, I use the non-uniform directional warp because I can derive the deformation by a custom input. Experiment with other maps here to get interesting results too. I continue with a multi-directional warp to get the smaller details in. Here you can really experiment with different inputs too, and also layer effects together. It really depends on the structure you want to achieve. For nice cracks and additional details, I use a combination of histogram select to select areas where I want the cracks and edge detect to get the cracks. Another nice method to detect areas for cracks is the quantize grayscale node. With the slope parameter you can also help to bring in smooth variation in edge thickness. Layering this effect is nice to get different crack intensities. When blending them, I use the opacity input of the blending node to define where I want the effect stronger, less intense, or even get rid of it completely. If you want to learn more, you can download and open the graphs shown in the video. Thanks for watching, and we would love to hear your thoughts, ideas and suggestions for future quick tips. So let us know them in the comments. See you in the next quick tip episode.